Well, hello everybody. Here we are out in the arcade again, and the arcade's a mess, and I've been trying to work on some games and rearrange some stuff. But the last time I had my Star Trek Next Generation pinball machine on, it had a problem. It reset, or it appeared to reset itself, and started doing weird and crazy stuff. So I finally got out here and moved some stuff around so I could get access to the side and open it up and find out what the problem is. But I'm suspecting that the problem is going to be battery acid corrosion on the main board, because it's been a while since I've changed the batteries, and I just have that feeling. So let's go ahead and turn it on, and I'll let you see what it does. Now, what it usually does is it continuously tries to find the balls, and it keeps spitting the balls and relaunching them, and then it'll say open coin door. Well, let's see if it'll say it again. And of course you notice the date is incorrect. Open coin door to use buttons, and it will do that if you do finally get it to start a game. It'll do it during gameplay. So I'll open the door, and sometimes if I try to go into diagnostics, it doesn't. And right now it's doing nothing. But I can push the volume up button, and I can increase the volume, but the volume down button does nothing. And the return button over here, the black button on the switch, I believe that just adds credits, and it's already up to the maximum 10 credits. So it definitely has a problem. And so what we're going to do now, once you open the door, it'll usually start a game.
Welcome to the Enterprise.
But it just has some weird behaviors.
Bonjour, mon capitaine. Q, what are you doing here?
Let's play a little game.
Q, we don't have time for your game.
Okay, so we'll just cut it off, and we're going to go ahead and take the translite out and open up the back box and have a look inside and see if we do have any leaking battery acid. Okay, well, we finally got in here, and as you can see, if it'll focus, even though it's not focusing real good, I think you can still see that the definitely has battery acid on the bottom of the battery holder, and you can see the discoloration in the labels on the battery on the case. And so it has definitely started to eat into the board a little bit. Even though it doesn't look real bad, it's still bad enough to trigger the problems that I've been seeing. So I'm pretty sure that once we remove that battery housing and clean it up with some vinegar to neutralize the acid, and we'll put a remote battery on it, we'll probably be in pretty good shape. But definitely I can see the corrosion on the legs of some of them chips right below the board there. So we definitely are going to have to pull the board and clean it up. Well, besides from the bad news of the battery acid, the good news is I've looked over everything real good, all the connectors and plugs, and I don't see any plugs or anything that has been overheating, burnt, or anything that indicates I have some other type of problem. And like I say, before this problem crept up, everything was working fine. I believe that all my problems are related directly to the battery acid. So we'll go ahead and pull the board out and start stripping it down with some vinegar and see if there's any traces that needs to be repaired, any chips that need to be replaced or sockets, and we'll give it a good once over and see what happens. Okay, today I'm going to be starting on my Star Trek The Next Generation pinball, and this is the CPU board. And I knew better, but one reason or another I did not change my batteries. The batteries in this are regular AA Pinlight batteries, and so they're not rechargeable. So they should be replaced just like in your smoke detectors. You ought to replace them at least once a year. So please, if you have a pinball machine, replace your batteries. While you're in there, if the battery holder is still on the board like this one, you can replace it with a remote battery holder, which will take the batteries completely off of the board. That way you won't have to worry about getting this damage to your board. Now, most people, and I'm guilty of it too, refer to this damage as battery acid damage. Well, that's not really true, because these batteries are alkaline batteries. So alkaline is a base, not an acid, but it is very corrosive. So what it does is, when the alkaline leaks out of the batteries, it travels down off of the holder and down onto the board and gets underneath the chips, starts corroding the copper traces underneath the green mask, and it will eventually ruin the board completely. So what we have to do now, this one isn't in too bad a shape. I can see where it started some corrosion on at least 3 of these. I see chips here, and of course the battery holder is toast. So I'm going to start by removing these batteries. Then we're going to desolder the battery holder and get that off of the board, and from there we're going to neutralize the base, or the alkaline. Now, since it's a base, we need an acid to neutralize it. So I'm going to use good old white distilled vinegar, about a 50-50 mix with distilled water, and we'll give it a good bath and scrub it with a toothbrush or nylon brush. And then we'll inspect the board to see if it's in need of any further repair, like removing the affected chips, cleaning up the traces, installing sockets, and installing new chips where necessary. But first we have to get it off and neutralize this alkali base, and then inspect the board and go from there. So we'll start by removing these batteries. Just don't want to get the alkaline on your hands, and these are basically leaking from the bottom seal here. So we just want to get those out of the way here. And like I say, I'm guilty, because these batteries have 2009 on them and it's now 2013. And I can't remember when the last time, if ever, I changed them. So these may be the original batteries that was in the game when I got it. So it's my fault entirely. I knew better, this one here doesn't look like it started leaking. But you should change these batteries, like I say, once a year. Same time you change your batteries in your smoke detector would be ideal. Or maybe you want to change them on your birthday. Some date that you can remember, but you always want to change them because you don't want to go through this. But since I didn't, and we have to, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, the battery holder here has 3 solder connections on this end and 3 solder connections on the other end. So I'm going to use my desoldering station, and we're going to see if we can't suck the solder from these connectors, which is 1, 2, 3 here, and 3 right here. So let's see what we can do here. Alright, there's 3 of them. Whoops. Okay, that one looks loose. That one looks loose. That one looks loose. That one may not be. That one's not. That one's not. And that's probably because on this end is where the acid has got into the solder, which may make it a little harder. I may have to add a little bit of solder to that and re-suck it out. So let's give it a try. That end is completely loose. And it would appear the center one has still got it a little bit. Okay, and it just came off. So, actually, doesn't look all that bad, except for right there the terminals are pretty corroded, getting started pretty good there. So I've already ordered a new battery holder, which hasn't got here yet, So hopefully it'll come in the next couple days, and once it'll probably get here in time for us to reinstall it. Now, I don't know if you can pick this up in the camera. Maybe you can, maybe you can't, but I can tell by looking at it real good here. You can see where the acid damage or the acid has spread on the board, and you can actually see that the area that it has spread to. So it encompasses these two chips, these resistors, and these resistors, and part of this chip right here. But it doesn't look all that bad. I may be able to get by with just cleaning it up, neutralizing the acid, and that might be all I have to do. Or I may have to go ahead and put sockets in and replace these chips here, and maybe even this chip. But I have these chips and this chip coming along with the battery holder, so I'll be able to put them in there if I deem it necessary once I clean the board up and see how bad the damage looks. So that's what we're going to do next, is go ahead and neutralize this base, not an acid, and clean it up and see what it looks like. Okay, now I have my 50-50 mix of distilled vinegar and distilled water, and I have a nylon brush here, and what we're going to do is dip it in here, and soak the components that are affected. Try to work them nylon bristles underneath the edges of the chip in order to try to get under there and loosen up any of the alkaline that's underneath there, and get the vinegar water solution under there so that it can neutralize the base, so that it won't be corrosive anymore, and hopefully stop any further damage to the board itself. Now we shouldn't have to go too far up the board, since we could tell where the electrolyte, what area it was in, and I don't want to soak any of these other chips that I don't have to. So we're going to try to keep it localized to this particular area. And hopefully that'll take care of any corrosion that is on the board itself. Now we'll flip it over, and I doubt any is on the back side, but we want to at least hit the three areas where the battery holder was soldered to, even though they were probably solid with solder and no acid, or there I go again, acid, no electrolyte probably got to this side of the board. But just in case, we want to make sure that if there is any that did creep through maybe had a little pinhole or something where the solder hadn't filled in. We want to make sure that we neutralize it. Okay, now we're just going to leave this on here a little while and let it do its thing, and then we'll come back and we'll give it one more scrub, and then we'll rinse it off with some distilled water and some denatured alcohol, and then we'll probably dry it, and haven't decided how I'm going to do that yet. Should have a heat gun around here somewhere that I can use, but I would have to find it, so you know how that goes. But anyway, we'll get it dried, and then we'll be able to inspect it real close, put the old magnifying glasses on, and see if we can see any more damage that we may have to repair, or whatever we're going to have to do. Alright, so I've neutralized the alkaline base that leaked out of the batteries with the distilled water and white vinegar, and I used a nylon brush to scrub it up good, and I also cleaned off the green mask from the traces that look like were affected. So now what I'm going to do is take some of this electronic cleaner here and going to wash out underneath each one of these chips here, and go ahead and clean it up with this. And hopefully this will get the rest of any other residue that might be left behind from the vinegar and the water. All right. And we just let this drain real good. Take a paper towel and sort of see if we can't dry it up a little bit, and then we'll take another close look at it. Okay, we've cleaned the board up, and it's looking pretty good. I've only found one place where the trace has almost been eaten all the way in two, and that is right here. You can see that the trace is only held together by one little section right there. So we'll have to repair that. Just get a little piece of wire and bridge it across there. But everything else cleaned up real nice, and it looks like everything is going to be okay. I don't even think I'm going to have to replace the IC chips here. They cleaned up rather nicely, and I may go ahead and try it and see if it works. It's possible though that these chips could, alkaline could have got inside the chips itself and eventually may eat into them, or may even be shorting the leads out where they go inside the chip, because they're just sandwiched in this plastic housing. So it's possible I may have to replace these chips anyway. In the long run, I'd probably be better off to replace them anyway. So when the parts come, we'll look it over again, and make a decision, we may go ahead and just replace the chips just to be on the safe side. That way we can look at the traces underneath the chip and clean those up too. So we'll probably go ahead and pull these two chips, and maybe even this one, because that's the area where most of the acid was. There I go again, acid. Most of the alkaline was that could eat these traces up. And underneath the chips, a lot of times you have a lot of these small traces, so it wouldn't take much to eat those up. And if you have a trace that becomes severed, well, then you got a problem. So yeah, we'll think about it a little bit more and make a final decision on it once we get the parts in. Just for grins and giggles, I put some vinegar in the container here, and I put the battery holder in there just to show you the reaction. See the bubbles that are forming from around the terminals? That's the reaction to the acid in the vinegar with the alkaline that came out of the battery. So in other words, the acid is neutralizing the alkaline base, and it's causing it to bubble, so because of the chemical reaction. Now this may clean this up, but I wouldn't use it. I got a new one coming, so I'm going to put a new one on the board anyway, only because I like to keep things original if I can. So what I also have is a remote battery box coming that has the two dummy batteries that will go in the original box on the board, and then it's connected with a wire where I can put it somewhere in the back box. So that way in the future, if I ever do have a battery leakage problem, I won't have to worry about it getting on and eating into the board. Well, today I got my parts in from Marco Specialties, and I got a new Williams battery holder, original equipment, and also I'm going to try one of their remote battery mounts, the solderous type. It has two, well, a plastic piece in here where the wires are connected to the bolts on each end, and it goes into the battery compartment. Sort of like I guess you could call it a dummy battery. It just makes the connection on the negative and the positive side of the battery holder. And then of course you got another battery holder hooked to it, so you can mount the batteries inside the cabinet away from the board. So we're going to give that a try. I could just solder the wires directly onto the board and be done with it, but I like to put it back in original condition if it's possible. We cleaned all this alkaline battery damage, cleaned it up, neutralized it with vinegar and water, and have one trace on here that's almost eaten too. The rest of them look pretty good, and even the chips cleaned up real good. The legs of the chips and everything, and the solder joints look good. So I'm going to go ahead and repair this trace, just reinforce it, and put the new battery holder on, and go ahead and install it and see what happens. If it turns out these chips are damaged, I had ordered the chips too, so if I have to pull it back out, I'll go ahead and take these chips off, put sockets on, and then put the new chips in. But I'm going to give it a try just like it is, because like I say, it does appear that there's no further external damage, and everything's been cleaned up and neutralized, so I should be okay. So let's go ahead and fire up the soldering iron and see if we can't go ahead and install that battery holder. Okay, one more thing I noticed, a couple more things actually. Of course, this place that has to be repaired, if you look at the bottom of the battery holder, it has these pieces here where I guess sometimes they use to screw them down in, but it actually sits flat on the board and holds it up off the board. Well, that one on the end right there is awfully close. I think it sits right on the edge of this, so I'm not going to be able to probably put too big of a repair here, so I'm going to have to try to make it as small as I can. The rest of the solder terminals on this side of the board, which are the ones that actually need to solder to the terminals on the battery holder to make the connection between the batteries, are okay. However, on the other side, when I desoldered it, for some reason, I don't know why, but the pads lifted. Of course, these are just pads that really are hooked to nothing right here. They just aided in holding it into the board. But this one right here is the positive lead, and that's gone too. So what I'm going to have to do is make sure that when I solder this back, that the tab for the battery holder is connected to this part of the trace on this side right here. So I'm going to have to make sure that I have a connection there. And also over here, here is the negative connection, and the outer corner of that came off too. I don't know if this was caused from battery acid or the damage from the alkaline leak, but this has enough to solder to on this side right here, so I should be okay there too. But that's just something you have to look out for and make sure that you have all your connections, you know, made, or you're not going to get proper operation. Okay, now that everything's been cleaned up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some liquid solder flux, and I'm just going to apply some flux everywhere that I need to solder to, and that will ensure that I get a real a good solder joint. And I'm also going to, all these traces that I exposed, I'm going to run solder over them and tin those to give it a little bit of extra protection. Okay, my soldering iron is up to temperature, so let's go ahead and start by putting some solder on these connections here. And now we'll just use a little solder wick to get a little bit of excess off here. Because of the battery acid, it didn't really want to stick all that good, even with the flux. So it took a little extra. take the solder wick and slide it around over top of it. Cut it off and get a new piece here. And now I'm going to take a little piece of solder wick and go ahead and put solder on it. Let the solder soak all the way through it. Cut a piece off. Lay this down flat. And I lose it there. And we'll heat it up. And now we have the trace repaired right there. So let's turn it over on the other side here. And let's put some solder on that positive terminal here. And we'll put some on these other terminals, what's left of them. Solder wick, clean a little bit of the excess off. Okay, so now we should be ready to install the battery holder. Now, battery holder is marked positive and negative, so it's the positive end. Positive end goes up towards this big chip. Of course, it has positive marked on the board here too. So, what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and put it in. And we got a little bit too much solder on this one here, so we'll wick a little bit more solder off of it. It doesn't want to go down in the hole because it's too much solder around it. So let's go ahead and wick a little bit around this one too. Okay, now that should fit better. Okay, need a little something to put a little weight on it there, keep it level. And we'll just put a little more liquid flux on the terminal itself. And now let's go ahead and apply some solder. Okay, now hopefully it's the solder wicked down on the leg of the battery holder and it's soldered on the other side. But if not, what we can do is solder it. But looks like we have success here. Let's see, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it looks like, if the camera can focus in on it here, it looks like good solder joints right around the feet of the tabs for the battery holder, and the same thing on this side. Looks like it made a real good connection there. So now the only thing we have to worry about is making this connection right here, because this eye around this one is gone. We made a good connection because half of the eye was here on this ground tab, so that we should be okay there. But we're going to have to add a little piece here, so we'll go ahead and do that next. So I'm basically going to do the same thing I did for that other trace on the other side. I'm going to take a piece of solder wick first we're going to tin it with just enough solder to hold it together. And let's make sure we get a piece that's real flat. Okay, now that's just right, because we just want enough solder on it to hold it together. So I'm going to cut this piece off. Now, because this lug here is flat, what I'm going to do is take the piece of solder wick and I'm going to cut it right down the middle. That way I'll be able to have a piece of it run up either side of the lug. So we'll take our snips here and try to cut it right up the middle. And we'll trim a little bit off of each side here. Okay, that way, so that when we push it back together, we'll have a little section in the middle that can go around the lug. Alright, and that's going to work okay, but I need to cut a little bit off of the end, or actually clear some more of this coating, the mask, the green mask, off of the trace. Okay, and I'll go ahead and cut this back a little bit too. Alright. Now put a little bit of liquid flux around it. This up here. Pinch it around the terminal. Push it down flat. Now we can take and solder it. now. We can get it to focus here. You can see that we have the solder terminal repaired, and it's good to go. So now all we got to do is take and clean the flux off the board. Do that with a little denatured alcohol or PC board cleaner, and we should be able to put it back in and give it a try. Okay, here we are. The board has been finished. New battery holder installed. All the solder joints look good. We've cleaned all the flux off the board on both sides here. So we're ready to install it and try it out and see if it works. Alright, well, we got the CPU board installed back in the back box, and as you can see here, we have the new remote battery holder. It's velcroed to the side of the cabinet, and the wire goes up, and it has two plastic pieces that simulate batteries, with the positive lead on one end and the negative lead on the other, and that just pops into the original battery holder on the CPU board, and that gives the battery power for the high score save battery backup. So now we can go ahead and put the panel back up and fire the game up and see if the repair to the CPU was successful. Okay, well, now the CPU is all fixed. So next thing we're going to do is we have a few other problems we're going to take care of. We have a diverter under the playfield that I know is not working correctly. We also have one of the optos on the ball through has a problem. We also have a new laser cannon kit to install. Have a few light bulbs to replace. Playfield needs a good cleaning. We're also going to replace the rubbers on the game, the bumpers and all that, flipper rubbers and bumper rubbers, and also we want to update the ROM version because it's currently running the LA5 ROMs, so I want to upgrade to the LX7 ROM. So we'll be doing a video on burning a new ROM and installing it, and soon the new color DMDs will be out, and we're going to order one of those, so we'll probably do a install video on that. So we have a little bit of work ahead of us, and hope you enjoyed this video, and hope you're looking forward to the next in the series. And by the end, hopefully we'll get this Star Trek Next Generation back up and running again. We also have a new side rail. This one, when I got it, had a bend in it right here. So we have two new side rails, and we're going to also install that. So maybe we'll make a video of that too. So that's all till next time.